with the taste of sea salt in the air and seagulls squawking in the distance. Today, I bring you a narration that will send shivers down your spine, a suspenseful and terrifying story from the abyssal depths. Hold on tight to your seats, because today, we dive into the ocean of the plot of the movie The Black Demon, released in 2023. The legends of old sea wolves turn into horrifying realities in this plot, where the protagonist is a monstrous shark known among fishermen in Baja California, Mexico, as the Black Demon. This marine beast, wrapped in legends and fear, supposedly reveals itself to the world only when summoned. In this suspenseful and mysterious setting, we encounter two brave men sent on a mission in the heart of the sea. Our first hero, Nacho, finds himself involved in a dangerous underwater task that ends in an explosion. But the true threat isn't the explosions or the unstable structures. It's the shadow looming from the depths. In a chilling scene, we see Nacho surrounded by sea creatures before being devoured by the abyssal beast. Up on the boat, darkness and silence take hold, foreshadowing the fate of his companion. In another part of our tale, we meet Paul and his family. This adventurous family is heading to the Baja California peninsula with a dual purpose: work and pleasure. Paul, the family's father and also an engineer, has the same task as Nacho, although he has no idea about the horrifying circumstances that surrounded the latter's mission. Paul and his family intend to stay at a hotel filled with memories and love, the very place where he and his wife Inez met 16 years ago. But the trip doesn't go as planned, and they find a closed hotel and a city that has dramatically changed. Undeterred, Paul approaches the locals in search of a good place to eat, but receives a cold response. Ray, a local, seems suspicious of Paul upon realizing he works for the oil industry. However, the charming Inez, with her gentle persuasion, manages to get Ray's help. On their way through the deserted streets, the family comes across an altar dedicated to Tlaloc, the Aztec god of rain, seeking protection for the people. The emotions and danger continue to rise in our story, so buckle up tight because the journey continues. After an intriguing conversation with Ray, Paul bids farewell to his family to carry out his professional duty, unaware of the real danger looming over them. The tales of the sea beast, the demon, don't seem to worry Paul, who thinks they are just legends of old fishermen. With a promise to return by nightfall, our daring engineer sets off towards his destination. On his way to the facility, Paul discovers a landscape of abandoned ships, remnants of what used to be a bustling harbor. Chaco, the man in charge of the boat, adds more mystery to the tale, telling Paul that people have fled in fear of the demon. However, not everything is as it seems. Our brave engineer has to face the last leg of the journey alone as Choco refuses to get any closer to the facility. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Inez and her children patiently await Paul's return. Tension rises when a drunken man approaches to harass Audrey, the couple's daughter. Without thinking twice, Inez displays her courage, confronting the drunkard and protecting her daughter. In their hasty escape, they discover that their car has a flat tire, forcing them to take an alternate route. Finally, they find themselves at the beach, where Inez manages to convince a boat pilot to take them to Paul, thanks to her audacity and the urgency of the situation. On the other hand, Paul's workday is far from peaceful. He encounters a large oil slick in the ocean and diving equipment floating in the waters. But none of this stops Paul, who is determined to complete his job. At the facility, he encounters a couple of men who almost attack him, but he manages to calm the situation by explaining his purpose there. However, all is not well. With no news from the outside world due to a broken radio, he questions what is happening. But the surprise comes when Paul sees his family approaching in a boat. Young Tommy, astonished, gazes at the ocean and notices a large shadow passing beneath their vessel. The abyssal creature is lurking. In an attempt to avoid an attack, Shadow fires a flare to distract the shark, and Junior hits the bars of the boat to confuse the beast. The story becomes even more electrifying. Paul is astounded as he watches his family's boat sinking. His heart races and anguish overwhelms him. But against all odds, his family safely reaches the facility. In the midst of relief, a terrifying incident occurs. Audrey, upon falling into the sea, encounters a spine-chilling sight: human limbs floating in the water. Rescued immediately, she insists she saw bodies, but her father, trying to maintain calm, claims she was merely confused by the oil scattered everywhere. Tension skyrockets as the pilot, visibly panicked, flees at full speed. Questions and doubts flood Paul and Inez's minds. Finally, the veil is lifted. Through binoculars, Shadow allows Inez to catch a glimpse of the pilot's horrifying fate, devoured by a shark of gigantic proportions. It is at this point that Paul grasps the terrible truth. The demon is real, and only Shadow and Junior have survived its arrival at the facility. Isolation becomes apparent as they discover the lack of cell phone signal in the place. Inez plunges into panic and guilt over the pilot's death, whom she had convinced to take them there. In an attempt to ease his wife's anguish, Paul seeks answers, and Shadow provides them. The beast is a Megalodon, a species of giant shark believed to be extinct for millions of years. With this revelation, they prepare to face a challenge like they had never imagined before. The ocean depths conceal an unimaginable horror. The last of its kind, the demon, relentlessly shakes the facility with ferocity. Amidst the turbulence, Paul urges his wife and children to take shelter while he investigates the situation. The only survival option is an aerial rescue. To make this possible, they must restore power to the facility. Junior and Shadow accept the challenge of diving into the depths to fix the electrical cables, while Paul takes on the task of repairing the communicators to request help. Equipped with a camera to closely monitor the diving team's actions, Paul promises to signal when they reach the proper depth. In the silence of the ocean, Shadow and Junior discover the bomb that Nacho had placed before being devoured by the creature. The place is set to explode in a few hours. Tragedy unfolds when Junior, terrified by the sight of floating human remains, attempts to flee, but the Megalodon shows no mercy. With its impressive jaws, it captures the team and drags them into the abyssal darkness. Paul, powerless, tries to halt the cable's progress, but it is a futile effort. Eventually, the shark destroys the capsule with its sharp teeth. Only Shadow manages to return to the surface. The sight of Junior, lifeless and mutilated, floating in the water is a devastating sight. Despite his attempts, Paul can do nothing to save Junior. Terror grips them all, aware that they must confront a ruthless beast and an imminent threat of explosion. And thus, our tale ventures into darker and more menacing territory, while the courageous Audrey, despite the fear coursing through her veins, puts on a brave face, hiding her panic so as not to scare the little one who sees her as their savior. Chaos ensues when poor Paul, an ordinary man caught in an extraordinary mess, realizes the depth of the hole he's dug himself into, with the loss of a member of his group echoing in his mind. There's poor Paul, blaming himself for the mess he's gotten his family into, and though he tries to appease Inez's fear with sweet words and a promise of protection, deep down he knows the path ahead will be arduous. He apologizes, of course, but words are just air, and he knows it. And in the meantime, there's a beast out there, waiting for its moment. The good-hearted Paul, with the spirit of a brave fighter, tries to lift the spirits of the distressed Shadow and seizes the opportunity to attract the attention of any nearby boats, if there are any. But the wise Shadow, with his mysterious demeanor, pours cold water on his desperation, claiming it's all a deception, a mental trick by the sea creature. And naturally the engineer scoffs. Who wouldn't? No beast can disturb a man's mind, or can it? Later, the valiant Paul, with his children safe in their quarters, has a conversation with his perceptive son Tommy. The young boy, with eagle eyes, has observed more than his parents would like, and he poses a simple yet profound question. Is this where it all ends? But Paul, strong as a rock, offers them hope and a mission, to find something that will help them escape. By that point, the cunning Inez begins to grasp her husband's diversionary tactics and tries to convince him to accept the offered help. But our proud Paul, with his stubborn determination, prefers to work alone. And despite everything, loyal Shadow offers to assist, willing to put friendship before any fight. Paul's idea is audacious, a maneuver that only an engineer like him could conceive, redirecting the cooling system to start the generator and fix the radio. Meanwhile, the rest of the clan was rummaging around, searching for gadgets and junk that could help them get out of there. Inez comes across some papers bearing her husband's signature, and upon taking a look at them, she realizes that her Paul isn't the saint she thought he was. After playing around with the pipes like a plumber, the engineer asks Sombra for a hand in soldering them. Suddenly, both of them hear a scream from Tommy. The little boy was near the water when the Megalodon decided to attack the platform, leaving him with soaked underwear. Upon hearing her son's cries, Inez dives into the water head first as if she were a dolphin, and Paul follows suit, trying to divert the shark's attention to himself. Audrey throws a life buoy to help her mother, and once she sees that her wife is out of danger, Paul jumps back onto the platform, attempting to save his own skin as the big fish heads towards him. With Sombra's help, he manages to get out of the water, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief. After handing a towel to his wife for her to dry off, Paul asks if she's okay, and that's when Inez decides to give him a piece of her mind in front of the children. She claims to have seen Paul's signature on security reports and accuses him of playing dumb. If he had paid attention to the warnings, all this mess could have been avoided, and their lives wouldn't be hanging by a thread. Realizing that his wife has uncovered the whole truth, Paul has to admit his blunder and confesses that he signed those documents to climb the corporate ladder because he wanted to get rich and provide his family with a comfortable life. Upon hearing this, Inez exclaims that her husband's job is to shut down operations like that and prevent people from risking their lives, but Paul has done the complete opposite. As she realizes that her husband is the true monster responsible for jeopardizing all those lives, Inez can't hide her disappointment, and Paul feels like he's been kicked in the stomach for his recklessness. The issue is that now they're running out of time. There's less than an hour left before everything goes up in smoke, and the engineer manages to bring the facility back to life. At this point, he realizes that he's run out of time to fix the radio, so he has to come up with another trick to get out of there if he wants to save his family. With a heavy heart due to the mistakes he's made, he decides to open up to Sombra and spill everything he's been hiding. It was during his first year working for Petroleras Nixon when he stumbled upon the company's first shady deal. After snooping around the premises, Paul drafted a report exposing all the dangers and loopholes he had discovered. Determined not to let his family pay the price, the engineer kicks it into high gear to get them out of there. Meanwhile, Sombra tries to juggle with the radio to call for help. She manages to send out a distress call that is intercepted by Choco before the device becomes deader than a doornail once again. Audrey and Tommy also want to contribute to the escape and set out to build a raft using the life jackets to float away from there. While his family is busy assembling the contraption that will allow them to make a getaway, Paul is devising a plan to lure the Megalodon into jumping. For his plan to work smoothly, he will have to get into the water and make the beast swallow the bomb before it goes boom. Upon hearing his proposal, Chato tries to make him see that his plan is crazy, as he's likely to not make it out alive. However, Paul knows it's the only card he has left. Determined to ensure his family's survival, he doesn't mind risking his life to protect them, as he sees himself as the culprit for all the lives lost in that place. After saying goodbye to his loved ones and offering a prayer to Talak, the man prepares to put on the scuba gear. Before departing, he apologizes to his wife for the blunders he has made. He reveals that there's a bomb in the facility and promises that after deactivating it, he will find his family in the inflatable boat. Valiant Inez is distressed by the dangerous mission her husband faces. However, Paul, that steel type, remains calm, asking his beloved wife to protect their children. Comrade Chato, with a furrowed brow, wonders what will happen if Paul doesn't make it out before everything goes boom. But Paul, as firm as an oak, asks his friend to take care of his clan and guide them safely back home. With the determination of a lion, Paul plunges into the blue waters, leaving Chato and the rest aboard an inflatable boat, yes, even the dog. When our intrepid engineer finds the bomb, he desperately sees that the clock gives him only 5 minutes before the final boom. In that moment, the tragic reality settles in. There's no escape. So the hero wraps himself in the explosive and closes the hatch to prevent more oil from spilling into the ocean. Suddenly, a shark sniffs his presence, and quick as lightning, he takes refuge in a tower before becoming the shark's appetizer. Meanwhile, his family rows with all their might, moving away from the platform. Inez, with her heart in her throat, answers a call from Paul and discovers the sad news. her husband won't return. Paul apologizes to Chato for all the mess and assures him that everything will soon get better. Then, he has a chat with his daughter and tells her how proud he is of her. He asks Audrey to never forget her strength. To Tommy, his little adventurer, he congratulates him for his bravery and asks him to take care of his mother and sister. And finally, to his beloved Inez, he apologizes and reaffirms his eternal love. He promises that his spirit will visit her from time to time. After bidding farewell to everyone, Paul faces the shark, allowing himself to be devoured. And then, a big explosion. The shark, now destroyed, and the family realize the loss. The children fall into despair, and the mother does everything she can to comfort them. Not long after, a ship appears on the horizon. Chato realizes that Chaco has received the distress signal sent via radio. As they are rescued, they watch with relief as the oil platform sinks into the ocean, bringing an end to the sorrowful epic.